Introduction to Physiology of Endocrine System.
The human body is composed of billions of cells, each with a distinct function. The functioning of the cell is influenced by the chemical messengers, which can be the neurotransmitters, the growth hormones, or even the products of cellular metabolism that serve as the chemical messengers and provide cell-to-cell communication. Now, this function of the cell-to-cell communication is very important because it helps in coordinating and integrating the functioning of different cell so that it can bring about the process of homeostasis. The chemical messengers, which are the mediators of cell communications, they may be released at different sites. For example, the neurotransmitter, it is released by the axon terminals into the synaptic junction and then it acts through the local mechanism. We have the paracrine substances which are secreted by the cells in the extracellular fluid. Then we have the autocrine, similarly secreted by the cells into the extracellular fluid. And then we have the hormones. These are basically of two different types. They may be neuroendocrine, which are secreted by neurons, or endocrines, which are secreted by the ductless glands into the circulating blood. In paracrine signaling, as you can see, the cells are separated by a shorter distance. As a result, when the substances or the molecules are secreted by the cell, they diffuse to the adjacent or the neighboring cell and then it exerts its action. So, example can be the histamine, which is secreted by the stomach mucosa and acts on the oxyntic cells to produce increased HCl. It can be acetylcholine, which acts on the parietal cells, or it can be, example can be prostaglandin, which brings about the cervical dilatation when it is secreted by the uterine mucosa. The action of these paracrine secretion is short-lived because they are easily degraded by the substances or the enzymes which are present in the adjacent tissues. Now in the autocrine signaling by these chemical substances, you can see the chemical substances are released by the cell in the extracellular fluid, and from the extracellular fluid it will either diffuse to the same cell or it will diffuse into the cell of the similar type. So this can be seen in cases of norepinephrine acting on adrenal medulla. Another good example will be insulin, which when secreted by the cell diffuses to the extracellular fluid and then acts on the beta pancreatic cells. So when we talked about the autocrine and the paracrine mode, they are meant for short distances. But whenever the distance between the secreting cell and the target cell is a longer one, either it is by the means of neurotransmitter or it is by the means of these hormones, which are nothing but the chemical substances which are produced by endocrine gland or the group of endocrine cells in response to a certain stimulus, and then they are carried by the form of in the blood to the target tissue where they can exert their physiological actions. So these hormones, even though they are present in a minute quantities in the circulating blood, they exert a profound effect on the body functions. The hormones are responsible for turning on and turning off of various cellular enzymes, and hence they influence the cellular activity. As you can see in this slide, what do you see? We have different type of disorders of concerning the hormone. It may range from cretinism, gingitism, rickets, acromegaly, then we have Cushing syndrome and goiter. So what do I want to stress in this slide? That a hormone plays a role that is involved in growth and development, the regulation of energy stores, then regulation of reproduction and species propagation. So these hormones are very important. Why? Because they play a complex interaction. There is a complex interaction between different hormones. A testosterone hormone is not only concerned with the reproduction, but it also influences the linear growth of the bones. It influences the maintenance of muscles, and then it influences the regulation of adipose tissue distribution, the lipoprotein metabolism. So each hormone has a complex interaction system and it has a versatile function. So let us understand the role played by each hormone one by one, and first we'll start with the classification of these hormones and then we'll understand this function. First, when we talk about the classification of the hormone, there are different classification. We can classify them according to the chemical structure, whether they are hydrophilic or hydrophobic. Here, I would like to classify them depending upon their origin and the chemical structure. So, we can divide them into three main categories: the steroid hormones, the amine hormones, and the protein peptide hormones. The chemical nature of the hormone determines how it is synthesized, stored and released, how it is transported in the blood, what will be the metabolic clearance and the half-life of the hormone, and its mechanism of action at the level of cells. So when we discuss each hormone, we'll be discussing it under these subheadings. So when we talk about these transport proteins, they are basically the plasma proteins which are produced by liver in a regulated manner. So hormones such as steroids and even thyroid hormone, a significant fraction is transported bound to these plasma proteins, whereas the protein and the polypeptide hormones are generally transported in a free form. That means when we talk about a hormone level, we have to consider the form that is bound to the plasma protein and the form that is free form, that is existing freely in the plasma. So if a free hormone level drops, for example, what will happen? The conjugated the hormone will be released from the transport protein and this will reach an equilibrium. So when we talk about these two forms, the conjugated form is inactive metabolically or the biologically, whereas the free form is biologically active. It is this form of the hormone which is responsible for the action on the target organ. It is responsible for the feedback control and even clearance by the cellular uptake, and the metabolism is that of the free form. So it is always important. So when you are considering the hormonal status of a patient, you have to determine the free hormone status and not the total hormone status. So let us understand the terms, the clearance of the hormone and the half-life of the hormone. We know that the hormone is present in the blood, either it is present bound to the plasma protein or it is present in the free form. So after some time, what will happen? The concentration of the hormone will start decreasing because it is cleared from the plasma and it is taken up by these four processes. Either it will be destroyed by the destruction of this hormone by the tissues into different forms, binding with the tissue, or it is excreted either in bile or by kidney. So all these four processes will lead to the clearance of this hormone from the plasma. It is known by the name of metabolic clearance rate. So if a hormone is bound tightly to the protein, it is unavailable for this clearance process. That means the half-life of the hormone will increase. For example, we have thyroid hormone which are tightly bound to the protein and hence its clearance is less and half-life is more. On the other side, we have peptide hormones which are usually circulated in a free form. So their clearance will be more and half-life will be less. Here in this slide, you can study the correlation of plasma half-life and the metabolic clearance of the hormone with the degree of protein binding. Here you can see thyroxine, which is 99.97% bound to the protein, has a half-life of 6 days and the metabolic clearance per ml is just 0.7 ml per minute. Compared with the aldosterone, that has a protein binding of just 15%. So the half-life is less, it is 25 minutes and it is rapidly cleared from the plasma. Then you have the protein hormones in which you have the insulin. The protein binding is very less because it is a protein molecule by itself. It is transported in the free form. Therefore, the half-life is shorter. It is just 8 minutes and it is rapidly cleared from the plasma. The steroid hormone which are synthesized from the cholesterol are lipid soluble, and you know of the different examples of the steroid hormone. We have glucocorticoid, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, naming just a few of them among a list of different steroid hormones. These hormones, very important point is that they are not stored in the cell. So whenever there is a requirement of the steroid hormone, they will be synthesized from this cholesterol ester. And where is this cholesterol ester present? It is present in the cell cytoplasm in the form of vacuoles. So this is cholesterol is taken up from the plasma. It is stored in the form of cholesterol ester in the vacuoles, and whenever there is a stimulation or the requirement for these hormones, it is then rapidly mobilized. And since I said that these are the lipid soluble hormones, they easily diffuse from the cell to the blood, and then they are transported in the blood. Steroid hormone, being lipid soluble hormone, need plasma protein for the transport process. So they cannot circulate as such. So they bind to the two important plasma protein. We have the cortisol binding globulin and the sex hormone binding globulin. So once they are bound to the protein, they are physiologically inactive. The activity is only present if they are existing in a free form. So what is the role of binding to the plasma protein? Once, it will help in the transport of this hormone. Secondly, it will act as a reservoir for these protein. So whenever there is decreased amount of the free hormones, this will be converted into the free form. Secondly, it will also slow the clearance of the hormone because they will be in the bound form, and therefore the half-life of the hormone will be increased. So these are the factors which influences the transport of the hormone. So we have this steroid hormone which is circulating in the blood, and finally it will reach to the target cell. Then what will happen next? Since it is a lipophilic hormone, this hormone can easily diffuse to the cell interior, and then it will reach to the cell inside by diffusing across the cell membrane. So once it is inside the cell membrane, what do you see next? That it will bind to the cytoplasmic receptor which is present intracellularly, and it will form a complex which is known by the name of hormone receptor complex, which will then move into the nucleus, and then in the nucleus this hormone receptor complex will bind here with the DNA element, and it is known by the name of hormone response element. And upon binding with this hormone response element, it will lead to the process of transcription and translation, and then it will cause the formation of these mRNAs, and then the protein synthesis will occur, and this protein synthesis will finally influence the cellular activity. For example, in aldosterone, it takes approximately 45 minutes for the aldosterone to act through this genomic machinery, leading to the production of sodium epithelial sodium channels, which is responsible for promoting reabsorption of sodium. So this is the genomic action of the steroid hormone, mediated by the receptors which are present intracellularly. Now, some of the action of the steroid also occurs rapidly within seconds to minutes. So genetic machinery is not involved in these actions, so it is known by the name of non-genomic action. And the basic component which is involved in these action is either the cytoplasm or the cell membrane bound proteins, and it occurs through influx or efflux of certain ions. So this action is seen for the different steroid hormones, and since it does not involve a genetic machinery, it is not influenced by the inhibitors of mRNA or the protein synthesis or the inhibitors of the genomic receptors. So it can function very well without the genetic machinery. Next, we have the amine hormones. These hormones are basically derived from the tyrosine, and the different example for these will be the thyroid hormones, the dopamine, or even the medullary hormones by the name of epinephrine and norepinephrine. And since they are amine hormones, they are stored in the cell, and whenever there is a requirement of this hormone, it is made available by the process of exocytosis. Now this thyroid hormone, on reaching the blood, the thyroid hormone activates the nuclear receptors. So this thyroid hormone reaches to the inside of the cell and binds to the thyroid hormone receptor, which is located in the nucleus. So once binding of this receptor, it activates this receptor, leading to the binding with the thyroid hormone response element, which leads to the gene transcription and translation, resulting in the formation of new intracellular proteins, these proteins exert the different effects of this hormone, which may be on growth, CNS development, or cardiovascular effects. So the other action of the thyroid hormone is also by the non-genomic means. This is a rapid action which is independent of gene transcription. The regulation of ion channels, the regulation of oxidative phosphorylation, or the activation of secondary messenger system occurs by this mechanism. So in this category of protein and polypeptide hormone, they can be grouped into structurally related molecules that are encoded by the gene families. So if a polypeptide chain has more than 100 or more amino acid, it is known as protein hormone. And if it is less than 100 amino acid chain, it is known by the name of peptide hormone. And we have different type of hormones under this category. We have the thyroid releasing hormone, which is just 3 amino acid, and then we have pituitary hormone, insulin, glucagon, and parathyroid hormone. Now, because these protein and peptide hormones are destined for secretion outside the cell, they are synthesized and processed differently from the protein which are destined to remain within the cell. The synthesis of this hormone begin from the large biologically inactive protein, which is known by the name of pre-pro hormone. So when this pre-pro hormone is there, it is then cleaved to the prohormone type in the endoplasmic reticulum. From the endoplasmic reticulum, it moves to the Golgi apparatus, where it is packed into the secretory vesicles. So when these vesicles are packed, there is some cleavage of this prohormone to produce smaller biologically active fragments and the inactive fragments. So these vesicles remain stored in the cytoplasm unless there is a stimulus for the secretion. So whenever there is a stimulus for the secretion, what will happen? There is influx of calcium, and this influx of the calcium leads to the movement of microtubules and microfilament, which are the cytoskeletal elements, and then release of these vesicles occur in a regulatory secretory pathway by the process of exocytosis. So these peptides are basically water soluble, so they can be dissolved in the plasma, then they can be transported from the site of synthesis to the target tissue in this dissolved or the free form, and then when they reach the target tissue, they can easily diffuse out of the capillaries into the interstitial spaces and ultimately the target cells. So once these protein molecules reaches the target cells, they are water soluble, so they do not cross the cell membrane. They need the presence of receptor for the action. So they act as a ligands or the first messengers, and these first messenger act through means of receptors, which may be the ion channel linked receptors, the G protein linked hormone receptors, or the enzyme linked receptors, and through these receptors they mediate the intracellular cell functionings. Now the question is, how does this hormone receptor binding get transduced into a cellular response? Because we know that hormones are a major aspect in controlling the cellular function. So how is this happening? So in the first figure, you can see that whenever the ligand is binding to the ion channel, it is leading to the opening or the closing of the ion channel, leading to the influx of these ions. So it can mediate the cell action through the influx or efflux of the ions. Second, you can see whenever this hormone, the protein or the peptide hormone, it binds to the G protein coupled receptor, it is leading to the activation of the receptor, which is causing the activation of these enzymes which are present in the cell membrane and leading to the activation of the signal transduction pathway and leading to the cellular response, which may be in the form of activation of the secondary messenger system. And in the third, we can see that binding of this hormone to the receptor complex leads to the activation of these enzymes which are present in the receptor itself, which leads to the further physiological changes or the cellular responses depending upon the activation. So here we can say that this protein or peptide hormone is acting as a first messenger system. It is acting as a ligand that influences the secondary messenger system or influx or efflux of the ions, or it leads to the various activation of the signal transduction pathway, mediating the various physiological aspects of the cellular functioning. The hormones like norepinephrine and acetylcholine act through this ion-linked hormone receptor, as you can see in this figure. The binding of acetylcholine to the receptor protein results in the opening of this channel with the influx of the ion, that is sodium ion, to the cell interior along the diffusion gradient, and then it leads to the cellular response. We have certain group of hormones, for example, growth hormone, insulin, leptin and prolactin, which acts through this enzyme linked receptor. And here we can see in this figure we have this receptor which has an extracellular domain which binds with this growth hormone. Then on binding with this growth hormone, it leads to the activation of the intracellular domains, and this intracellular domain is closely linked to an enzyme which is Janus kinase here. So these enzyme linked receptors, either they function as enzymes as such, or they have a closely associated, or they are closely associated with enzymes. So this receptor spans the membrane only once, therefore they are also known by the name of one-pass receptors. Here we have another example from the enzyme linked receptor. We have the hormone by the name of ANP, atrial natriuretic peptide. The binding of this hormone leads to the activation of the enzyme which is present in the receptor itself. The intracellular domains of this receptor has guanyl cyclase activity, and therefore it is an enzyme linked hormone receptor. In JAK-STAT kinase pathway, the receptor is a homodimer. The name is supposedly to be derived from a name of Greek god Janus, who is the god of transition and beginnings. One of the phase looks to the future, the other one to the past. So let us understand this JAK-STAT pathway. We have different peptide growth factors, cytokines and hormones which are linked by this enzyme linked receptor or the tyrosine kinase for the cellular signaling. Here we take the example, for example, we have the growth factor, growth hormone which binds to this receptor. This receptor is basically a homodimer that is formed by two similar units. Here you can see, and it is associated with this JAK, which is Janus-like kinase protein, which can be activated. So once this hormone binds with this receptor, it leads to the phosphorylation of this associated Janus kinase. You can see here the phosphorylated form of Janus kinase lead to the phosphorylation of the STAT. STAT are nothing but signal transducers and activators of transcription. The phosphorylated STATs then move to the nucleus to bring about transcription and translation and activation of intracellular enzyme, resulting in a cellular response which may lead to the synthesis of the new cellular proteins. So we have this G protein coupled hormone receptors. Some of the protein and peptide hormones such as follicular stimulating hormone, oxytocin or even angiotensin act through this receptor, which is basically known by the name of serpentine receptor. As you can see here, it spans the cell membrane 7 times, and you can see we have the site for the G protein binding in the cytoplasmic site of this G protein. And then you can see whenever the hormone or a ligand binds to the extracellular site of this receptor, it leads to the activation of G protein which is present in the cytoplasmic site, and this activation of the G protein then leads to the various cellular responses. So this G protein is nothing but the guanosine protein, which is of two basic types, the heterotrimeric form and the monomeric. Heterotrimeric means it has 3 subunits, the alpha, beta and the gamma subunit, whereas the monomeric subunit is only containing the alpha subunit. So when we talk about the hormones, we are talking basically about the heterotrimeric form of the G protein, that can be GS, GI or GQ, which is linked to the different signal transduction pathways. So here in this slide you can see the different type of G protein which are involved in the hormonal action and which are coupled to the G protein coupled receptor. One of the example is GS, which activates the adenylate cyclase enzyme and causes the increased cyclic AMP level. The hormones acting through this is epinephrine and glucagon. Then we have, as the name suggests, GI, that is inhibitory to adenylate cyclase, decreases the level of cyclic AMP, example being acetylcholine. Then we have GQ, which regulate the phospholipase C activity, influencing the level of IP3 and calcium through DAG system, and the example being histamine. We also have GO, that is G-transducin, which is present in rhodopsin in the eye. But here in this discussion of hormone, action of the hormone, we'll be studying about GS, GI and GQ, that is adenyl cyclase pathway and the phospholipase C pathway. So let us understand this G protein in this slide. This is G protein coupled receptor. As you can see, it is a serpentine receptor and it is attached to the alpha subunit, which is attached to beta and gamma subunit. We can see that whenever this G protein is present in an inactive state, the alpha subunit is bound to GDP GDP, and then when there is a signal molecule that is in the form of protein or peptide, when it binds to the extracellular domains of the G protein coupled receptor, it leads to the activation of alpha subunit by the replacement of GDP with GTP. So this alpha subunit becomes activated and it dissociates from the beta and gamma complex. So we have the inactive state in which the G protein is occurring as a heterotrimeric complex and the alpha subunit is attached to GTP, and we have the active state in which the alpha subunit is activated by binding to GTP and it dissociates from beta and gamma subunits. So we can write it as such: the G protein coupled receptor is attached to the G protein. A G protein is a heterotrimeric that has alpha subunit, the beta subunit and the gamma subunit. Normally it is present in an inactivated state. Whenever a hormone binds to the G protein coupled receptor, it leads to the activation of alpha subunit and it binds to the GTP protein. The binding with the GTP protein lead to the dissociation of alpha subunit with beta and gamma, and this activated alpha subunit then leads to the activation of signal transduction pathway by means of activation of various cellular enzymes or the second messenger system. Now this alpha subunit can lead to the activation of two of the signal transduction pathway. One is the adenyl cyclase cyclic AMP pathway and the second one is phospholipase IP3-DAG pathway. So let us first understand the pathway, that is adenyl cyclase signal transduction pathway, which is activated by hormones such as follicular stimulating hormone, ACTH, somatostatin and TSH. The mnemonic can be used here is FAST. So let us understand how this adenyl cyclase cyclic AMP pathway is causing the cellular response. So whenever the hormone, for example follicular stimulating hormone, binds to the G protein coupled receptor, it leads to the activation of this receptor and the activation of alpha subunit of the G protein leads to the dissociation of alpha subunit from the beta and gamma. This alpha subunit moves down the cell membrane and this brings about the activation of adenyl cyclase. This enzyme is important for the conversion of ATP into cyclic AMP. The increased level of cyclic AMP results in activation of an enzyme which is present here, that is inactive protein kinase A to active protein kinase A. So this activated protein kinase A then moves to the nucleus and it binds to this CREB or CREB binding elements, which causes the activation of the target genes, resulting in transcription, translation and formation of the new proteins. So this action is mediated by this adenyl cyclase cyclic AMP pathway to cause the cell response. The enzyme, the protein which is causing the increased level of cyclic AMP is G stimulatory or GS, and if it inhibits the cyclic AMP activity, the G protein is named as GI or G inhibitory. This is summary of the events that occur in adenyl cyclase cyclic AMP pathway. Next pathway which is activated by this G protein is the phospholipase C pathway, which involves the IP3 DAG system. So the hormones which are involved in this pathway are gonadotropin releasing hormone, oxytocin, angiotensin 2 and thyroid releasing hormone, which can be remembered by the mnemonic of GOAT. So we can see here we have the G protein coupled receptor, and here it is bound to the G protein which is known by the name of GQ. So whenever the molecule, for example oxytocin molecule, binds to this G protein coupled receptor, it leads to the activation of alpha subunit of GQ protein, and this then moves down the cell membrane and it acts on the phospholipids which are present in the cell membrane, and especially the phosphatidyl inositol biphosphate, also known by the name of PIP2, and it forms two important components by acting on it. One is IP3 and another one is diacylglycerol. So this IP3 then moves down to the endoplasmic reticulum, or it can also go to the mitochondria, and it causes the release of calcium from the endoplasmic reticulum into the cell cytoplasm. So when this calcium is increased, this calcium ion acts as a second messenger to bring about the various activities in the cell. Similarly, the other product that is formed is diacylglycerol or the DAG, which lead to the activation of enzyme by the name of protein kinase C, which then phosphorylates a number of proteins, which leads to the cellular response. So in this way, the hormone receptor complex that is formed results in the activation of intracellular pathway, and resulting the final outcome is the cellular response and the physiological activities within the cell. This is summary of the events that occur in phospholipase C IP3 DAG pathway. Now calcium acts as a second messenger system. It diffuses rapidly into the cytoplasm, binds with the calmodulin, and the calmodulin then activates the protein kinase enzymes within the cell, which produces the cellular response in the form of metabolism of cells or producing various hormonal effects.
The reference material for today's lecture.